A brand new motorcycle loses roughly 30% of its value in the first year alone. By year 3, you are often down half of what you paid. That is the rule. Buy used, always. Everyone on this channel will tell you that, including us, in almost every other video we make. But rules exist to have exceptions. There are 8 machines right now where handing over full sticker price is not just forgivable, it is actually the smarter move. Not because we say so, because the numbers say so. Let us count them down. Starting the list at number 8 with the Vespa GTS 300 HPE. We are starting small, but do not let the size fool you. The 2026 Vespa GTS 300 HPE is not your average scooter, and it is definitely not your average used purchase. New, it runs $8,099. A 2-year-old used example runs $6,900 to $7,400. On paper, that used price looks tempting. Do not fall for it. Here is the thing nobody tells you about Vespas. Underneath that glossy paint sits a stamped steel monocoque chassis, not a plastic-covered tube frame like every other scooter on the road. That steel body is load-bearing. It is not decoration. It is the actual structure holding the entire scooter together every time you hit a pothole. And that changes everything about buying used. A single drop, a single slide across gravel at a stoplight can leave you with structural damage, frame misalignment, the kind of damage that gets covered up under a fresh coat of paint and a sneaky sticker placement over a dent. You will not catch it in a phone photo. You might not even catch it in person unless you know exactly where to press and where to look. Most buyers do not. Most sellers know that. Think about the used scooter market for a second too. Vespas get sold at a much higher rate through private, non-dealer listings than most bikes on this list. That means fewer service records, fewer honest disclosures. More, it just needs a little TLC in the description, which is code for something the seller does not want to explain out loud. And scooters in general live a rough life. They get parked outside apartment buildings, left in the rain, bumped by cars while parallel parking on tight city streets. A Vespa is often somebody's second vehicle, which means it does not always get the same care a rider gives their only bike. That is not a knock on Vespa owners. It is just the reality of how these things get used day to day, and it is exactly why a used one deserves more suspicion than a used sport bike babied in a garage. Buying new means you skip that entire gamble completely. No guessing games. No crawling underneath a scooter with a flashlight, hoping you spot a weld that does not quite line up. The 2-year factory warranty backs that decision up nicely too. It covers the high-performance engine, the fuel injection system, and the electronic systems. 24 months of coverage on a machine where body repairs alone can cost thousands at a specialty shop, since most general repair shops will not even touch a monocoque Vespa frame properly and will simply refer you back to the dealer anyway. Now, if you are strictly an urban commuter who just wants something cheap to chain up outside a coffee shop, buy used and do not lose sleep over a scuff or two. A few cosmetic dings will not kill you, and you were never going to baby it anyway. But if you actually care about the integrity of that frame long-term, new is the move here, hands down. Speaking of hidden dangers lurking under a used listing, our next bike takes that fear and multiplies it by roughly 10. Are you the kind of motorcycle enthusiast who loves finding a good deal but hates getting burned by one? Before we go any further, there is something every rider needs in their garage before they even think about inspecting a used bike. Imagine standing in front of a bike you want, the seller swearing it's perfect. That's where riders overpay by thousands on a $10,000 bike. Our buyer's kit tells you what it's really worth, your fair price, and when to walk away. A wrong bike costs thousands. This kit, just $49. The easiest money you'll ever save. Scan the QR on the right or tap the link in the description. Let's get that bike you've always wanted for even cheaper. All right, now let us get back to the countdown. Coming up next at number 7 is the Suzuki Hayabusa Gen 3. The 2026 Suzuki Hayabusa is basically a missile with a license plate, and missiles attract a very specific kind of used buyer that should scare you off the second-hand market entirely. New, it runs $19,099. A 2-year-old example currently sells for $15,000, $500 to $16,800. That gap looks like free money sitting on the table. It is not. It is a trap. Think about who actually buys a brand new Hayabusa in the first place. This is not a commuter bike. Nobody grabs a Hayabusa to putter to the grocery store. A huge chunk of the used market gets filled with bikes that got launched at drag strips over and over. Bikes that had their ECU sloppily flashed by a backyard tuner chasing an extra 10 horsepower on a laptop in a garage. Bikes dropped onto a cheap lowering kit that wrecked the suspension geometry and never got properly corrected afterward. Bikes run flat out to top speed before the engine was even properly warm, because patience is not exactly the defining trait of the average hyperbike buyer. You cannot see any of that from a photo online. You cannot always hear it in a cold start in a driveway either. The damage is often internal, quiet, and waiting to show up 2,000 miles down the road when you least expect it. Usually somewhere far from home on a highway on-ramp. There is also the paperwork problem. Bikes this powerful get flipped constantly. Titles change hands fast, sometimes multiple times in a single year, and each new owner is one more unknown chapter in a history you cannot fully reconstruct from a listing. Insurance companies know this pattern too, by the way. Ask around and you will find that used Hayabusas with a rotating cast of prior owners sometimes carry higher premiums than a fresh first owner example, simply because the risk profile on paper looks worse. That is a real cost that quietly eats into whatever you thought you saved at the point of purchase, month after month, for as long as you own the thing. Buying new erases that risk completely. The engine has never been abused, never been modified incorrectly by someone chasing bragging rights on social media. The 12-month unlimited mileage warranty covers the internal engine components, the transmission, and the entire Suzuki Intelligent Ride System electronic suite. That is a lot of expensive interconnected technology protected for a full year, and on a bike this fast, that protection actually matters more than it would on something slower. Who should still buy used anyway? A dedicated drag racer or land speed competitor who is going to strip the bike down to the frame and bolt on a turbocharger regardless. If you are modifying it into oblivion within the first month, the previous owner's abuse history genuinely does not matter to you one bit. But what if the danger is not abuse at all, but pure untested newness? Our next entry is so fresh that a real used market barely exists for it yet. Appearing quietly at number 6 is the Suzuki DRZ4S. This one is a genuinely fascinating case, and it is the perfect example of a used deal that is not actually a deal at all once you dig into it. The 2026 Suzuki DRZ4S is a complete ground-up redesign, replacing the long-running, carbureted, early 2000s DRZ400S that riders knew for over 2 decades straight without a major overhaul. New, it costs $8,999. The closest thing to a used comparison is the old generation 2024 DR-Z400S, going for $6,200 to $6,800. Here is why that comparison is basically meaningless once you look closer at what you are actually buying. The new DRZ4S brings electronic fuel injection, ride-by-wire throttle, switchable off-road ABS, and traction control. The old model has none of that, not a hint of it anywhere on the spec sheet. You are not comparing two versions of the same bike with a few years between them. You are comparing a smartphone to a rotary phone and somehow pretending the rotary phone is the smart purchase because it costs a little less at the counter. Think about what that older platform actually asks of you too. Carburetor jetting for elevation changes. No traction control if the trail turns to mud. No ABS if you grab the front brake too hard on loose gravel. These are not deal breakers for an experienced rider, but they are a real gap in capability that the discount does not fully account for. There is also a simple supply problem working against the used buyer right now. When a model gets fully redesigned, the outgoing generation does not just sit there waiting patiently. Values on the old platform often get a little shaky as buyers realize a replacement exists, and sellers sometimes rush listings out the door before that reality sinks in further. You could end up negotiating against a seller who already suspects their bike is about to feel dated, which is not exactly the leverage a bargain hunter wants walking into a deal. The savings on that old carbureted model simply do not justify skipping an entire generational leap in rideability and safety tech. And because the new model just hit dealer floors, there are barely any low-mileage 2026 units floating around on the used market anyway. Buying used right now basically means settling for old tech at a small discount, instead of paying a bit more for genuinely new tech with modern electronics baked in from the factory. The warranty backs this up too. It is a 12-month unlimited mileage factory, limited warranty covering defects across the entire motorcycle. Outside of normal wear items like tires and brake pads, peace of mind on a bike with an entirely new electronics package that has not been battle tested for years yet by thousands of other owners. Who should buy used anyway? Riders who want that dead simple, fully analog carburetor setup specifically to tinker with on weekends, or trail riders planning to smash the bike against rocks where scratches and dents genuinely do not matter to them one bit. Simplicity has its charm, no argument there. But our next bike proves that sometimes the used market gets so greedy that new becomes the only rational choice left on the table. Coming in with value at number 5 is the Yamaha Tenere 700. The Yamaha Tenere 700 is one of the most beloved adventure bikes on the planet right now. And that popularity has created a genuinely bizarre, borderline insulting used market around it. New, it runs $10,999. A 2-year-old used example is going for $9,800 to $10,500. Read that again slowly. The gap between new and used is practically nothing. Owners are asking near sticker price for bikes that already have 10,000 miles stacked on the odometer. That is not really a used market anymore. That is a joke with a price tag attached to it. Ask yourself why an owner would even sell at that price instead of just keeping the bike. And the honest answer is usually that they know exactly how hot demand is right now and are cashing in on it. And on top of that insane pricing, the 2025 and 2026 model years bring a massively upgraded 6.3-inch vertical TFT display, revised switchgear, a reinforced frame and exhaust bracket to prevent crash damage, and an updated switchable ABS system. These are not cosmetic tweaks. The reinforced bracket alone addresses a genuine weak point that plagued earlier model years under hard off-road use. And remember, this is an adventure bike. The used examples on the market are not gently commuting to an office 5 days a week. Most of them have seen actual dirt, actual drops, and actual river crossings that did not go exactly as planned. A worn Tenere is not a worn commuter bike with a few extra miles on it. It is a bike that has been genuinely tested by terrain, and testing like that leaves marks you cannot always see from a listing photo taken in good lighting. So think honestly about what you are actually choosing between here. Paying nearly the same money for a worn, older spec bike carrying someone else's mileage and someone else's dents, or paying just slightly more for a brand new one with better tech, a cleaner dash, and 0 miles on the clock. Framed like that, it barely feels like a choice at all. The warranty here is genuinely impressive too, and it tips the scale even further in favor of new. 36 months of total coverage. That breaks down to a 12-month factory, limited warranty, plus a complimentary 24-month Yamaha extended service package layered right on top of it. 3 full years of mechanical and electrical protection, as long as scheduled service gets maintained along the way, which is a massive cushion for a bike that owners tend to ride hard. Who should still go used here? An experienced adventure rider who happens to find a bike already loaded with $3,000 worth of aftermarket suspension, skid plates, and luggage racks installed by the previous owner. That specific math can flip in your favor fast if you find the right listing, though those listings are rare for exactly the reasons above. Speaking of math flipping in your favor, unexpectedly, our next bike involves something you would never guess: interest rates. Now hold on a second, because before we push into the back half of this list, there is something every rider evaluating a used bike absolutely needs to see first. Imagine walking into a viewing holding all the cards. You know the fair price, you know your opening offer, and you know the exact number where you walk away. That's how you knock hundreds, even thousands off the asking price. Our buyer's kit hands you those numbers for just $49. Negotiate from facts and never overpay again. Scan the QR on the right or tap the link in the description. Right away, knowing you got the best deal. All right, let's get back to the countdown. Number 4, Harley-Davidson Low Rider ST. Here is a curveball nobody sees coming. Sometimes the reason to buy new has nothing to do with the bike itself and everything to do with the paperwork sitting behind it. The 2026 Harley-Davidson Low Rider ST carries an estimated base price around $23,399, though it shifts slightly depending on color choice. A 2-year-old used example runs $21,000 to $22,500. That is not a huge gap in sticker price to begin with, which already makes used less appealing than it looks at first glance. But here is where it gets genuinely interesting. High-end performance cruisers from Harley-Davidson hold their value aggressively, which means used prices stay stubbornly close to new pricing across the board, year after year, model after model. And because of that retained equity, dealerships frequently roll out promotional financing rates on brand new inventory. Rates that can make your monthly payment on a new bike actually cheaper than financing a used one through a typical used motorcycle loan, carrying a much higher interest rate. Used motorcycle loans in general tend to carry steeper rates than new ones anyway, since lenders view them as higher risk, and that gap compounds over the life of the loan. Read that again, because it matters more than the sticker price does. The new bike can genuinely cost you less per month than the older one sitting right next to it on the lot. That single fact is the entire exception in a nutshell, and it is the kind of thing a lot of buyers never even bother to check before assuming used is automatically cheaper. This is exactly why comparing sticker prices alone is a mistake on any bike you plan to finance. Two bikes can carry nearly identical price tags and still cost you wildly different amounts by the time the loan is paid off, purely based on the interest rate attached to each one. Most buyers walk into a dealership focused entirely on the number on the windshield sticker and never once ask what the actual total cost looks like over 3 or 4 years of payments. On top of that financial advantage, you get a 24-month unlimited mileage limited warranty. That covers any factory defects in the Milwaukee 8 117 engine, the transmission, the electronics, and the structural components. 2 full years of protection on the beating heart of the machine at a monthly cost that might not even be higher than the used alternative sitting 2 spots down the row. Who should still buy used here? Someone planning to immediately tear down the engine, swap the cam, throw on a new exhaust, and dyno tune the whole setup the week they bring it home. That kind of aggressive modification voids a factory warranty on a brand new bike anyway. So why pay the premium for protection you are about to erase yourself with a wrench? Financing tricks are one thing, but our next bike is where the stakes of buying used get genuinely scary and genuinely expensive if something goes wrong down the road. Number 3, BMW R1300GS. The BMW R1300GS is basically a rolling supercomputer with 2 wheels bolted underneath it. And that is exactly why the used calculation flips hard in favor of new here. New, the base model runs $18,895 before options packages get added. A 2-year-old used example, whether it is the current R1300GS or the outgoing R1250GS, runs $16,500 to $18,000 depending on what options it happens to carry. Now think seriously about what is actually packed inside this machine. Radar-guided cruise control, fully electronic, semi-active suspension, adjusting itself in real time as you ride. Multiple interconnected electronic systems, managing everything from ride modes to braking response to traction control on the fly. This is not a simple motorcycle you can diagnose with a multimeter and a Saturday afternoon in the driveway. It is closer to a luxury car that happens to lean into corners at highway speed. And here's the real problem with buying one used and out of warranty. When these complex electronic systems eventually fail, and something inevitably will over time, given how many sensors and modules are involved, the repair bills can scale into the thousands with almost no warning at all. You are not fixing a carburetor with a $5 gasket here. You are potentially replacing an entire electronic suspension module or a sensor array that only a dealer with proper diagnostic software can even properly identify. There is also a used buying trap specific to bikes this advanced. A private seller may not even know their bike had an electronic fault corrected under a prior warranty claim, or may not disclose it if they do know, simply because it seems fixed now. You inherit that history blind, with none of the manufacturer's own paper trail to back you up once the warranty clock has already run out. And diagnosing these systems yourself is simply not realistic the way it might be on an older, simpler machine. You cannot pull a code with a basic reader from an auto parts store. These bikes often need manufacturer-specific software just to tell you what is actually wrong, which means even a curious, mechanically inclined owner is locked out of doing their own troubleshooting the moment something out of warranty acts up. Buying new gets you a 36-month or 36,000-mile BMW new vehicle limited warranty. That covers all major mechanical, electronic, and semi-active suspension components against failure. Full indemnification through the bike's most complex and vulnerable early years of operation, right when those systems are most likely to reveal any factory defects in the first place. Who should still buy used here? Riders who genuinely do not care about the latest R1300 electronics package and would rather grab a well-serviced, fully documented 5-year-old R1250GS with a clean paper trail of dealer service stamps, proving exactly what was done and when. Complexity is expensive to insure against on your own dime. But our next bike proves that even simple dirt-cheap dirt bikes can fall into this exact same trap. Number 2, Honda CRF 300L Rally. You would think a cheap little adventure-style dual sport would be the easiest bike on this entire list to buy used without a second thought. You would be wrong about that assumption. The 2026 Honda CRF 300L Rally carries an MSRP of $6,499. A 2-year-old used example runs $5,800 to $6,200. Look closely at those two numbers side by side. The savings from buying used amounts to somewhere between $300 and $700 total. That is barely a discount worth chasing across town for. This bike has extreme global demand right now, which keeps secondhand asking prices sitting uncomfortably close to full retail. Pricing everywhere you look, from small-town dealers to big-city marketplaces alike. And what do you actually get in exchange for that tiny discount? A bike that has almost certainly been dropped off-road at least once by now, because that is simply what happens to entry-level dual sports in their first 2 years. Ridden hard by a first-time beginner still learning how to feather a clutch on gravel and loose dirt. Fitted with worn dual sport tires that need replacing immediately out of your own pocket the moment you get it home. A chain that is already stretched thin from months of trail abuse and questionable maintenance intervals. Add up a fresh set of tires and a new chain, and that savings disappears entirely, sometimes even flips negative once you factor in labor. And that is assuming there is no frame damage. Hiding underneath a scuffed skid plate, which on a genuinely entry-level bike ridden by a beginner, is not exactly a rare scenario. This is also the exact kind of bike people buy to learn on. And learning means mistakes, stalling on an incline, dropping it in a parking lot at walking speed, clipping a curb, misjudging the width of the panniers. None of that is catastrophic on its own, but it adds up across an entire ownership cycle. And a beginner's bike changing hands after a year or two is rarely changing hands because everything went smoothly. Meanwhile, buying new gets you a 12-month, unlimited mileage, freely transferable warranty. It covers any defects in manufacturing, engine components, and electrical assemblies right out of the gate. Fresh rubber underneath you, a fresh chain that has never seen a rock, 0 drops, 0 mystery, scratches to worry about explaining to yourself later. Who should still buy used anyway? Someone who stumbles onto a rare, completely unridden garage queen example from an owner who realized too late that the seat height was simply too tall for their inseam. That specific unicorn listing saves you the dealer setup and freight fees without inheriting any of the usual abuse risk that comes standard with this particular bike. And speaking of bikes bought by riders who realized too late that something was not quite right for them, our final entry might be the most counterintuitive one on this entire list. Number 1. Kawasaki KLR 650. We are closing with the bike everyone assumes is a total no-brainer used purchase. the 2026 Kawasaki KLR 650 base. And that exact assumption is precisely where riders end up getting burned. New, it runs $6,899. A 2-year-old used example goes for $5,600 to $6,000. On the surface, that gap looks genuinely worth chasing down, and most buyers stop their analysis right there. But here is what makes the KLR community absolutely unique, and honestly a little terrifying from a buyer's perspective, standing outside looking in. KLR owners are famous, or maybe infamous depending who you ask, for doing their own backyard maintenance with a mixed bag of results. These are riders who pack the bike with heavy gear for rugged multi-week trips into the middle of nowhere, far from any dealership or qualified mechanic. And a huge number of them tinker with the notorious 𝗕𝗨𝗬𝗜𝗓, a well-known weak point on this platform, often without any real documentation of whether the fix was even done correctly the first time around. Buy one used and you are gambling blind on whether a previous owner adjusted that lever properly, whether their wiring job for a set of cheap auxiliary lights was done safely without shorting something down the line, or whether the frame is quietly hiding stress damage from years of overloaded luggage racks bolted on for trips across 3 or 4 states at a time. None of that shows up with a flashlight and a quick Saturday afternoon inspection in a parking lot. There is also the resale irony here worth mentioning. Because the KLR is so beloved for exactly this kind of DIY culture, used listings rarely come with clean documentation. Owners are proud of their mods, not their paperwork, and that pride does not help you one bit when you are trying to verify what is actually safe underneath the bodywork. And these bikes travel far from home more than almost anything else on this list. A KLR sold after a big cross-country or overland trip has usually seen washboard gravel roads, water crossings, and temperature swings most street bikes never experience in their entire lifespan. That is exactly the kind of ownership story that makes for a great campfire tale and a genuinely uncertain purchase for whoever buys it next. New side steps. All of that uncertainty in one clean move. You get a 12-month limited warranty protecting the powertrain, the chassis, and the electrical system, backed by a completely clean maintenance slate, starting from day one, with nobody else's backyard wiring hiding under the tank. Waiting to surprise you on a trip. Who should still buy used anyway? Budget travelers specifically hunting for the old, pre-2022. Carbureted generations for around $3,500. Deliberately choosing mechanical simplicity over fuel-injected refinement for long trips off the grid where a carburetor can be fixed with parts from almost anywhere. And that is the full list. 8 machines, 8 very specific reasons, where paying full price is not a mistake at all. It is a strategy, backed by real numbers instead of just a gut feeling. For every other motorcycle out there that did not make this list, the old rule still applies exactly as it always has. Buy used. Every single time, no exceptions. If this video showed you everything you need to know before buying a new bike, click the next video on your screens right now to keep riding with us. Don't forget to like this video and make sure you join our tribe by clicking that subscribe button.